Hello and welcome everyone to this live demo session on HANA XS Advanced Training with Node.js and Web IDE with HANA Development on XS Advanced Training. In this demo session, we will look at the core concepts of XS Advanced architecture, and we will look at a very simple application creation. This is a kickoff meeting for starting our new module for HANA XS Advanced Development with Node.js. So let's get started with this demo session. The very first question comes, who is this course for? Does it really make sense for me to attend this training, or should I go within another module? So let's understand the positioning as well as the audience for this course. Example personas, Olivia Emma, she's an application developer. And if you are also an application developer like Olivia, this course is for you. You would like to work on application development and build XS Advanced application, which are native HANA application on XSA architecture. This course makes sense for you. The second user persona is Eva Luna. Eva Luna, she's already an existing HANA consultant. She's working on HANA as native development, including XS Classic development, where you build schemas, database content, as well as the applications using XSJS and XSO data services. Now, Eva is seeing a change in trend in industry with more and more cloud applications being built also on-premise. You see that XS as advanced architecture is getting prominent location as compared to classic. She wants to upgrade her skill to be able to develop XS advanced applications with native HANA. Also Liam, who's a database developer, he's working in the company mainly to build database content, which includes sequences, database tables, views, calculation views, SQL script code, procedures, triggers, and functions. All of these kind of database objects he's working with. And if you're one of our database concepts like CDS views, calculation views using Web IDE, cubes, expose the data out of SAP HANA system and store it in HANA system, this course also makes sense for you. Finally, James mentioned he's a fresher on HANA. He just started his career with respect to SAP HANA, and he would like to start developing HANA content by utilizing the concepts of native HANA development on XS Advanced, understand the tooling as well as architecture of XS Advanced. This course would also help him to be able to master XS Advanced. So it's been a long time ask and demand from many of you. As some of you would have attended my XS Classic training. You have asked me many times to start XS Advanced as well. And here we are today with a start and kickoff of this XS Advanced training latest updates. So what can you expect at the end of this training? So you can experience the edge with the latest tools and technologies, including the methodologies and best practices to be able to build native HANA applications. You will understand the new programming paradigm with XS Advanced architecture and how it is different from classic. You will also learn the latest tooling which is used with XS Advanced, especially the tool like SAP Web IDE. Then you will learn the core concepts of Node.js and HANA Deployment Infrastructure, so-called. We will also learn how to develop both the database layer, the UI layer, and also the application layer using Node.js. Complete fresher on Node.js. You have no clue what Node.js is. Don't worry. We'll have sessions for you conducted throughout this course to be able to make you an expert on Node.js as well. And finally, we will learn the cloud application programming model, so-called CAPM. Of course, an introduction of CAPM will be included as part of this course to learn the new tools and frameworks and trending in things in the industry when it comes to new cloud application programming model. So let's see what can you expect in this demo session of next 30 minutes. A very simple XS Advanced application with one database table and one calculation view using Web IDE. We will upload the data into this database table using HDB table data upload and using a CSV file. And finally, we will expose this data over the internet using an OData service, which then can later be used by any applications running on the cloud or on-premise, be it a Fiori UI5 or a normal HTML or a Java-based applications. So that's the flow of today's demo session. towards the end of this demo session, we will have a round of question and answers to be able to cater to all your questions which are open about it. So the tools, on the tool side, we are not going to use legacy tools or the obsolete tools or deprecated tools like HANA Studio. We will be using latest tools like SAP Web IDE for native HANA development. From the project side, we are not going to use the classic XS project. Rather, we're going to use a new type of project type called MTA, multi-target application module. Why it's called a multi-target application is because one single project or a module includes multiple types of runtime applications, be it maybe a UI5 application which is executed by HTML5, be it a middleware application executed by Node.js, Google's V8 engine, and or probably the database which is executed by HANA Deployment Infrastructure to be able to deploy the content in the database. And of course, we will also see the compatibility layer with XSJS. So if you're already working on native HANA development using XS Classic, you will see the compatibility layer for the Node.js, which allows you to still run XSJS and XSO data services on this new advanced architecture. So let's go back straight to the architecture or overall flow of development when it comes to XS Advanced. Do now is just let's have a look at a quick introduction or architecture of XSA. So for simplicity, I'm just going to write the required layers. Of course, I'm not going to discuss in detail the architecture. It's going to be part of our very next session on next session. So that's where we will discuss the detailed architecture, but just in a nutshell, I will be covering the architecture so that you can understand where what is going to get executed. So in XS Advanced architecture, of course, you will be building the front-end applications at the end, which is using SAP UI5. And this is where our end user will interact with the application. And this is what calls our HANA platform. So this whole thing inside is the HANA platform. Now, this includes XS Advanced engine, which supports different variety of runtimes to run applications like HTML5, Node.js, which also has a compatibility XSJS layer. We have then Java, and also we can also add other build packs. Then finally, we have the database layer, where we have now a complete schema-free development using HDI. HDI stands for HANA Deployment Infrastructure, which will then generate something called a container. And a container, you can compare it like a schema. So what is a schema? A schema is nothing but a home of database objects. So when you create tables, views, sequences, triggers, procedures, all of the runtime object lives inside the container. So that's what is going to be our architecture. So to be able to develop all of these things, there is one single tool which you can use to develop everything, and that's called SAP Web IDE for HANA development. Of course, in the next coming future, this will also be replaced by a tool called BAS, Business Application Studio. But for now, as part of this training, our main focus will be on Web IDE. And of course, towards the end, I will also show you an introduction of BAS as well. So this tool, we will, you can see, is one single all kinds of modules, be it a XSA module with Node.js, be it and be it a UI5 module as well. So that's the capability what we get with the Web IDE for HANA. And that is what I will be using today to able to show you at least this one and this one too. So today, for keeping it, but rather just create a database table with some data inside this database table from Excel. And then we will create an OData service which expose this data out over the internet. And in the middle, we will create also a calculation view in HANA. So this will be our development artifact today. First, to start a table, then to load data in the table. Step 3 is to create an OData service on top of that calculation view of type cube. So what is our demo data or demo content or the sample example today we're going to take? So it's a talk of the town as elections are coming closer. More and more parties are preparing themselves with more and more stuff, and probably working as one of the research company and who already using HANA as the primary database to store the data. We would like to research and do some data intrinsic operations on elections data of last election. So that's the reason we will be developing a database table which will store all the US elections data. We will, of course, expose this data over the OData service to outside. So let me switch to system. So I'm using an on-premise XS Advanced system. If we get this server access from, I'm going to cover a dedicated options. You can avail the server access, build hands-on training throughout this entire process. So I'll go inside to the Web IDE. That was called my HANA XS Cockpit. And from there, I can jump to my Web IDE. I will enter my user. And I will connect to my Web IDE tool. And here we will start creating a very simple database or module. So let me right click over here, say new, and I say project from templates. So in the past, we used to create XS project using HANA Studio, but now that's something which is changed to an application here on the Web IDE. So we create a multi-target application project, and we can name this project as, let's say, demo. I can say demo September. Click on next. And now I just provide the information, for example, description on abouttrainings.com. Now, what is this space concept? We are going to detail out this concept in chapter 4, where we will learn about the concept of basic administration, the concept of organization and spaces. So space is mainly, you can just say, group of application resides inside a space. So you could have different spaces created for different parts of your company, different organizations. And then, of course, probably you can also create a space for one team, 3 different spaces like development, quality, and production. So now click on finish. And you will see in a moment a very simple project called demo SAP got created. And I have got nothing inside this except this file called MTA YAML file. Basically, this file is also known as deployment descriptor file, which is what will inform the XS Advanced or XS Engine how the project should be deployed and what are all the different microservices this project has. So as of now, when I open this, you will see there is nothing interesting inside. It's just the ID of the project, description, and the version. But as and when I will add more and more content will automatically added inside this MTA YAML. Also, if you would like to develop multiple modules inside one app, for example, I have a database module for database content and a Node.js module for exposing OData, then you can also establish a relationship between these modules using the MTA YAML file. It also offers a graphical editor called MTA Editor here, where we can go back and quickly edit things graphically as well without writing or worrying about too much of typing and also the typos. So that's the file. We get it. And now I'll start creating a database model because I would like to create a database table in my HANA database and store the data as well. So let's right click over here and say create a new database module. So HANA database module. And we can just give this module name as DB. Next. And now I just can choose the version of HANA. So sometimes it may happen that you are developing an application in dev system and your development system is on latest version, but your production system where this application will go and deploy is on lower version of HANA. So it's always recommended action. So accidentally you will not end up using some features which are not there in your subsequent systems. So you can always do that. I'll just keep it for latest for now. And I click on finish. And now you will see a new database module is created. And if I go to my empty YAML, you can see an added over here as well to my empty YAML, to my descriptor file. You can also see that. Now I'll switch it over back. SRC property, a database table. So I'm gonna right click, and now I am just using the concept of HANA Core Data Services, CDS, HANA CDS concept. Of course, don't be overwhelmed by this demo session, because all of these things are going to take time for me to explain you each and bits and pieces of these things more in detail in coming days. But today it's a demo as a kickoff, so in flow to make you understand how typically things looks like. Small example in front of you. Of course, in our detailed training starting tomorrow, we will have so many of these concepts covered first in the theoretical way, and then only we'll go into the system and understand how they're generated. So I'm going to create a new object here. And you can see there are a variety of objects to choose from. And of course, I'll choose HDB CDS artifact. And we can give a name to this artifact, let's say elections. And I say create. You can see a new file called HDB elections. Yeah. Now, what I will want to do is I wanted to add a database table inside. So I can just double click on this namespace. And over here, we can just come back and say create an entity. And you can see its entity is nothing but your database table. So I'm going to create a election table, and we can double click on this to start adding the pretty much a graphical manner. You don't have to write too much of code to be able to define a database table. So let's create a database and let it be a string. So I'm going to add about 4 to 5 columns, state, county. Then we'll have party participating in elections, which was the candidate, and how many votes they've got. So let's keep this as string, 30 characters, 8, 40, 10, and I'll choose this one. I'll mark my state and as a combination as a primary key. So you can see in HANA nowadays we can use the Web ID tool. It's very easy to create a database table without a logic, and it looks more of like your SE11 world. If you come from the above world or the ERP world, ECC world, then you will see more or less the same way you can create a database table over here. Module, the table is not going to get created, but we are good to go. So now let me just perform a module build right away. So I'm going to go back to this folder. It's going to build all the objects. Of course, right now we have folder, but if you do a build on the database level, folder level, then all the objects inside that will be built. So let me build this now. It's going to take a couple of seconds. So what it's doing now is, if we go back to our architecture, it's contacting a service which is called HANA Deployment Infrastructure Service. Its structure service is creating a container, and inside that container, which is exactly like a concept of schema, which contains the database object. So this way I can do a completely schema-free development. Point one is a development perspective, and also own containers. I can work with my own containers, and that way our data. So for that, we just go to this next view here on the left side called Database Explorer view. And over here, I'm just going to see an HDI container. So now you can see this is my container, which is already created in my dev space. I select this and I click on OK, just to add this container out there to see if the database table is created. So now you can see all the runtime objects, the database objects, which you will get generated inside this container. And I can just go back to tables, and voila, you can see an elections table, a results table inside elections namespace is created. Now, if you carefully observe that the table name, the runtime we gave, so it actually automatically appends the package name or the folder name. So this is my project name .db folder we had. Under that, we have double column elections namespace, and then results was my table name. So this will be actually your database table name on which you will be firing a database query. You can open the data directly here. And of course, we don't have any data at the moment. Or you can also go back and just quickly open SQL console over here and just do a select star from this runtime object, the database table, so-called execute. Of course, there is no data right now in our table. So of course, you are in a first step of creating this object, but now it's time that we just load some demo data in this table to be able to are working fine. Yeah. So I'm going to switch over back to our development here, a new file. So what I will do is I'll just right click and say import, and I'll go browse. And on my local computer, I have a file over here called elections.csv. Just going to import this file in my project. So just select that and say okay. And I can see an election CSV file is imported, demo datasets and this code what in your HANA system, and then just be auto created in your system in your HANA box. Yeah. So now this is the file where you have the data, but how we need from this file to the actual database table. So database explorer, of course, how will this data will go and sit inside this artifact, which is also going to do that job. So it's called HDB table data, or called a table interface, to be able to transmit this data from my Excel sheet to the actual database table. So let's quickly create that. I'm going to right click on SRC and say add new, and we can choose create a new database artifact. It has, let's say, set data, and here you can choose the type to choose from. Of course, majority of them we're going to learn throughout this course, but let me choose the one which I really want. It's called, so just, you can also type in and search if you don't, if you're not comfortable searching and finding it over here. So that's what we will be doing also. So you can see transmission of the data will happen between my Excel and the database table. So let's go inside this information or the settings to be able to move this data to the database table. So let's give the format underscore version. So this is one good thing you will see. You will not be doing too much of copy paste of code, so that you can understand the meaning of every line of code. So now we have to go import settings, and of course, what is that I want to import? So develop multiple database table. You can specify all of them here one by one. It's possible. Yeah. So it's basically acts as an array. So now I will provide the different settings which we really need related to the import of data. So I have to first say target table. What's my actual runtime table name? Ago, this is our table name. I'm gonna copy that table name and paste it over here. So this is the table name where the data will go. Where will it come from? It will come from source data. Yeah, and my source data, what is the type of that source data? Is it a text file? Is it a Excel file? Excel, which type? So I say data type is CSV. Please note that this is the technique which we typically use only to load demo data to get started with our development. But in a real-time use case, when you have some data which is coming from another concept of SLT as well as BODS, which we typically. So let's give the file name. So remember, the file name has to be the complete address of the file. So we are inside the demo September project name .dbe folder, and inside the actions.csv. Yeah. Next is, does my table has a header? Yes, it has. And what is my dialect? It's HANA. Then what's my type config? And I will say it's we file all the values, my header of the table. So that's the reason I have to specify my delimiter. So that's the first source data setting. How my source looks like. And then just do I need to include any filter? Before you load the data, you wanted to just load it maybe only for Kings County, or in this case, let's say Florida. So you can filter there. And then what are all the columns you want to import? Your import columns. Sometimes your table may, the source data may have all of them. So you're going to specify them in an array form. So let me just keep them in an array form. And I'm going to mention all county, party, and finally. So these are all the columns I would like to import.